Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Meta Cafe for your daily astrology, human design, and oracle energy report. Good morning, Roseanne. It's good to see you out there this morning. It is another gorgeous day. I was just outside running around barefoot. I was so engaged in going outdoors that I totally forgot to turn my camera on. And when I went to start the broadcast, it wouldn't let me. And I was like, what is wrong? I started to panic, but then I realized, oh, you didn't even connect your camera. Oh dear. Some days are kind of crazy that way, right? Speaking of crazy, now I want to hear from all of you yesterday about whether or not you had crazy experiences, because literally almost from start to finish yesterday after I hung up from you guys was a craziness. Good morning, Mimi. Good to see you out there. So remember yesterday morning we were talking about Mercury squaring Saturn, Mercury ruling the mind. And I told people to make sure if your mind is in your mind, that you're paying attention. And we talked about what it is that, you might inadvertently say or do, and that receiving of messages, etc., etc. So I get off the air and I get this call from my daughter, and my grandson had been hit by a school bus on his way to school yesterday morning. And he's fine, by the way. So he has a possible broken arm and scrapes on his ankle, but lucky for him, he did not get really badly hurt. But the bus driver didn't stop. She just kept going. And it was literally a witness to the accident that called the police, and the police show up at the school saying, did you know this kid got hit by a bus? Because, of course, my grandson didn't even mention it when he got to school. And so it was a very weird bit of news yesterday. Two things come to mind here. One is, why would a bus driver hit a kid and not stop? Well, the only thing that I can really think, and this is not me defending her, I think that's indefensible action if she knew that she had actually hit him. But if your mind is wandering, and think about how many times we're driving by road, right? We know the road, so we don't think about where we are. We get into sort of a hypnotic state when we're driving. And is it possible that that's something that happened? She got into a hypnotic state and then she just didn't realize she hit him. I don't know. Or maybe she looked in her mirror and she saw him standing and she didn't think he was hurt, so it was no big deal. I don't know, but it was very odd. Literally on the heels of that announcement that was made, to me from my daughter, the call, I'm sitting out on the front porch and I'm looking through all of my, I'm getting ready to write an article on the full moon coming up. So I was, focusing in on that. My cat was out there on the front porch with me. Now, I live in a fairly rural area, and this is a prime bald eagle territory. And most of the time, they're flying fairly high, and you don't really, you're not interacting with them at all. In fact, you might hear them. You certainly can see them flying around. They're usually at the tops of the fir trees or the whatever pine trees that we have around here. But yesterday, literally silently, 4 of them flew into my yard. And the only alert that I had was that they were fighting over some food. These are bald eagles. Yes, 4 of them, Roseanne, came through into my yard, literally at the height of maybe, 15 feet above me. And my cat hightailed it. She was out on the front porch with me. The only notification that I even had that they were out there was when they started screeching at one another because they were fighting over a piece of food, which they dropped, right? They dropped. And I ended up having to, after, watching these 4 eagles doing, this whole weird thing, like right in front of me, they flew off. And then I went looking for the food because I saw it, drop out of the talons of the one eagle. And it was planted right in front of my neighbor's garage door. And it was the carcass of a bird. I mean, literally the wings were all that was left, but there was the bones or whatever that connect the two wings. So I quickly picked it up and I wandered across the street and I dropped it out there on the road with the eagles circling around me. By the way, they were still around. I'd see them, silently flying around. And later when I went back to check the mail, they had picked up the carcass and it was gone wherever it was. And it was interesting because to me, I'm like, first of all, my cat and I both jumped. She ran in the house. I didn't have the sense to run in the house. I was too transfixed by what I was watching. But I also know that there's probably a message in that for me. 4 bald eagles. Bald eagles typically represent spirit. For the number 4, I don't know exactly. Is that about building or foundations or something? Was it a message for me, or was it a message for my neighbor, since it was her house that the gift was dropped upon? And I usually, this has happened to me before, where an eagle has flown through and dropped something, as in it feels almost like they're gifting you. Once it was a duckling, and this was at a different house that I lived in. And thank you, Mimi. She says, I hope today will be far more calm for you. And so interesting, thinking about all these things. Well, I was also woken up in the middle of the night. I got the cramp from hell in my calf, and I tried to get out of bed and I couldn't because it was so cramped up. And, when I did finally get out of bed and I turned around and looked, it was 2:22 on the clock. This after going to bed at 11:11. So I don't know what the messages are all about, but messages are coming in, and hopefully my conscious mind is or my unconscious mind, is in receipt of those messages, because I really don't know what it's all about. But anytime I start seeing the numbers run, that's usually some kind of changes are coming. 11:11 is the portal, the gateway energy. 2:22 usually is about things that are about to manifest. 4:44, I don't know. Or the 4 eagles, not 444, but I've seen my share of 444s over the last week too. So interesting to see the planets in a position to be transmitting messages to us, and the messages coming, at least in my world, to me via nature or via very bizarre sort of circumstances. It's interesting in light of today's Mars-Pluto conjunction that some very interesting things happened in our outer world yesterday too. And, I think I've told you guys this before, as planets are building toward a conjunction or toward a square or a trine or whatever, that's when the energy is the most potent. Not necessarily, sometimes it's as it exactly happens, and other times it is just as we're leading into it. It's like it's building, then the action happens. It's like the crescendo point, and then it wanes in effect. So rarely do we see something after the fact that happens, unless it's, a look back to the past. Well, yesterday, all over the news, or at least, in my part of the world, was this killer that was called the Golden State Killer, because he was killing in California, the Golden State. This at the time I was actually living in California, so I remember this distinctly, in the 70s and the 80s, where he was killing people and they never knew who he was, right? They never found him. 6 days ago, as these things are building up, the police are, get on to who it is they think this person is, and they got DNA and they were able to prove that this man was the killer. Extraordinary, because how many years ago was that, right? 45 years ago? Murders are happening, and they find the killer yesterday. Weird, just weird stuff. I think that, that's partly that Mars-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, where Capricorn being ruled by the planet Saturn, where karma comes home to roost, right? Karma comes home to roost. So totally an interesting day today. I too, Mimi, hope that today is a calmer day. I think it will be, because as we jump into the energy of the day today, we have the day starting with the void of course moon, which I didn't mention yesterday. I totally forgot about it. The void of course moon began this morning at 5:49 a.m. for those of you on the East Coast, and runs until 9:13 p.m. tonight. So it's a longer period of time that we're in the void. For us on the West Coast, it began at 2:49 a.m. and ended at will end at 6:13 p.m. So literally most of the day today, both coasts are dealing with a void of course moon. So I thought I would bring out, and I was looking for it, I'm not sure if I found it, the information about what we can do on a void of course moon, what we should avoid on a void of course moon. So some examples of don'ts during a void of course moon. Don't submit your resume for a new job, either by email or snail mail. Don't be interviewed for a new job or do a business presentation. Don't start a new job. Don't hold company meetings or make big purchases. Do not negotiate prices, test drive a vehicle or drive it for the first time, blah, blah, blah. Don't make an investment or open a new bank account. Don't call on clients. Now, sometimes these things are unrealistic, right? Like if you're someone who's in sales and your job is to call on clients, maybe today would be a good day to, catch up on paperwork or do the, calls from inside the office or something. Don't go on a first date. Don't get engaged or get married. And don't have elective surgery today. Don't open a business or host a party or a social affair. And don't gamble or start a trip to a gaming facility. I don't know how they choose these things, but it does kind of make sense not to engage in any kind of risky behavior today. Some examples of what we can do during a void of course moon: prayer and meditation, sleep and dream. Anything to do with the non-material world we can take care of. Let someone start proceedings against you in court. Well, let's hope we don't have to do anything like that. You can end a relationship or get divorced, close doors to end a business. All those things seem pretty dire, and, I would just say today's a great day to focus inward, right? Focus on yourself, on your own growth, on reading perhaps, or studying something, maybe just staying out of taking action, even though there's a lot of energy out there today with the Pluto conjunct Mars, or Mars conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, for us to take steps toward our goals and our plans. So maybe you can sort of find a happy medium where the steps that you take forward that are being demanded almost by Mars and Pluto and by yesterday's Mercury squaring Saturn are taken in small increments. Like, what's the next step that I can take? And how can I maybe work behind the scenes on something rather than jumping out there and starting something new? So it's a walking a fine line kind of day. That's kind of how it feels like. What are they, walking the razor's edge? Only I don't think we're in danger of being sliced and diced if we make a misstep. I think it's more like the feeling that we can get that things went nowhere after we've been working so hard to build something or to do something, to make something. So maybe taking care today to make sure we don't start anything new or add to something in a way that isn't already part of the plan. I hope that makes sense. The moon is making several other aspects today, which is it's always fun to see the moon making aspects, even though these are aspects that were already in play. And a couple of them are aspects that won't come about until after the moon's void of course is over this evening. So, for example, the moon sextile Jupiter was already in play before she went void of course. A sextile is a 60-degree angle. And I think we've talked before about a sextile. It is a place in a chart where you have sextiles in your own personal chart, or places where your gifts and talents reside. So if you have, for example, a moon sextiling Jupiter connection in your chart, then perhaps depending on the houses that it's in, you may have a very great gift at being able to help people emotionally, to be able to counsel or guide people in some way. You might have a gift or a talent in being a spiritual leader, or in some way be able to help people that find themselves in emotionally sticky circumstances. Because the moon and sextiling Jupiter is being able to use that emotional energy of the moon to dig into the soul and to be able to push it along evolutionarily. So you're helping other people evolve. So that's happening today. It's a really good place. I think it's also the moon in Virgo still until tonight. The moon is in Virgo, and Virgo being the stickler for details, right? Knowing how to perfect something, knowing how to purify something, and Jupiter in Scorpio possibly bringing things up out of the dark. And certainly yesterday we saw that, right? The possibility that Jupiter's involvement in this bringing forth a secret, something that had remained hidden. I even think possibly that the moon sextile Jupiter is in some way protective. And when we look at, what is his name? Ronnie Jackson, the guy that Trump had nominated for a position in his cabinet or to run a governmental agency, and all of the things that began to be revealed about him. I think, there's this protective element out there. I also wonder about the protective element around even some of the more surprising things that happened in my family and to me yesterday, where, a school bus hitting a kid could have been devastating, right? It could have been horrendous, and it wasn't. Those 4 eagles flying around my yard could have been after my cat and not after, a fight between whatever the food was that they were fighting over. So many different things out there sometimes are in a protective state for us, or we're being protected. And I think that's the moon sextiling Jupiter. The moon is also trining the Mars-Pluto conjunction today. I think we're going to hear a lot today about things, perhaps even power struggles going on in the government, more things being revealed, perhaps about situations that have already been in play. This is a pretty big one. This is not for the faint of heart kind of thing. When the moon is triggering a Pluto-Mars conjunction, or a Mars-Pluto conjunction. I keep saying that backwards. Usually the first planet you mention is the one that is moving forward toward the conjunction. So Mars, being the faster moving planet, is moving into Pluto, as opposed to Pluto moving into Mars. Hope that makes sense. So interesting day. I would still say pay attention to what's going on around you. Make sure you're using your voice and your mind appropriately. If you can stay home today and just work at home, or be, doing things that aren't necessarily out and about in the world, please do. I was kind of gratified that today my husband is, his company is shutting down for the day today and tomorrow to do physical inventory. And that means that he's not necessarily going to be around a lot of heavy equipment, because Mars rules metal. It rules things like, buses, cars, big machinery. And Pluto, of course, is about power, and sometimes how that kind of power with these machines can go wrong. So I was kind of glad today is going to be a quieter day for them. And I think everything happens in the way that it's meant to happen. And what the messages may be, we don't always know in the first moment, but hopefully it becomes clearer, in my case, as time goes on here. All right. So good morning, Cheryl. How are you doing this morning? So the Mars-Pluto conjunction in some way for us all is having us work with the moon today in a step-by-step progression. Hopefully those steps are not things that you have to do that would take us outside of what's normal for the void of course. I would say taking the steps that that you can do peacefully, or that you can do away from the outer world, perhaps, is better than having to be out and about today. Although it's a Thursday, it's going to be hard for some people who are already at work to be able to just say, okay, hey, I'm not going to go and do anything today. If you have to go and do things today, just be watchful, be aware. Do not let your mind wander when you're behind the wheel driving. Don't let yourself be in a dangerous situation and where you are unconscious about what's happening around you. Stay aware and stay within your body, stay at peace, and we will get through this energy. Let's see. There was something else I wanted to talk about today, and that is about the planet Venus. Um, I think maybe it was last week. I don't know. The weeks are all blurring into one another here because it's like unbelievable to me that we're in the last full week of April. We're heading into May. But at some point, we were talking about the planet Venus in human design and how, for the next foreseeable future, Venus was going to be moving through the manifesting gates of the throat. In human design, the throat center is the center for putting words or voice to something and therefore allowing it to manifest by having an actual word attached to it. And so this morning I was looking at where's the planet Venus now, because when we first talked about it, Venus had been sitting at gate 8, which was the gate of contribution, right? Where we want to be able to contribute in our own unique way to the world, in whatever way that is, right? Your contribution is, something that's personal for you. And today, Venus is sitting at gate 20. And a gate 20 is a gate that a lot of you manifesting generators recognize because it's engaged in the archetypal energy of the manifesting generator, where gate 34 in the sacral makes that beautiful right-hand turn directly up to the throat. So all of the sacral energy gets immediately able to manifest up in the throat. The manifesting generator in that respect then can be very busy, right? Manifesting things one after the other, but are they the things that they really wanted to, or are they just busy being busy, right? That becomes the real question for the manifesting generator. What are you busy doing? Or what are you so busy that you're not doing, right? We can get ourselves really busy doing things, but is it anything worth your time and effort? Or is it just busy work? So, of course, I go to the Gene Keys, my favorite, book for going deeper. And as I looked at this gene key, and remember Venus, the planet, she rules our values and our money. The financial picture is ruled by Venus. Everything that we value, even our own self. Do we have our self-worth? Do we have self-assurance? Are we loving ourselves? She represents love. She represents money. She really does carry a lot of weight. If you think about the things that she rules, they're very important things to us. Relationships and our relationship with money. And probably most important is the relationship that we have with ourselves, how we value ourselves and how we think about the value that we have to the contribution we're making to the world is how I would read this right now. So the shadow of the 20th gene key, by the way, this is called the sacred Om. I kind of like that name, the sacred Om. And the shadow of this energy is superficiality. And this is really an interesting word when you think about it, because first of all, in human design, there is a gate of commitment. And the gate of commitment is gate 29, which is on the sacral. It's not up at the throat. So interesting that gate 20 has a superficiality apart. It's like the opposite of commitment, right? Would be the superficialness of things. But this shadow is really talking to us about using the mind incorrectly. How many of you still believe that decisions are made from your head, from the mind, right? How many of us, I fall into the trap myself, trying to think my way through something to make a decision, even though I know better, right? I know better. I teach this to people. I talk about this all the time. Nobody on the planet is designed to make a decision from the throat or the neck up. Only the authority in a chart, and we talked about authority in the webinar we did a week ago or so, the authority lies in the lower energy centers of the body. It lies in the emotional center, the sacral, the spleen, the identity center in some cases, and the will center in some cases. It's never in the root center, and it's never in the head or the ajna or the throat. So then this particular gene key at the shadow is our stubborn reliance on the mind, right? What is the mind telling us? What are our thoughts dictating for us today? And So this is a great time for everybody to start looking at what's in your mind. What is your head telling you, right? Every day in every situation, um, big and small in your life, right? What is your mind telling you? And what level of reliance do you have on making decisions from your mind? And thinking about things is not wrong. That's not what I'm saying, because we are definitely thinkers. I mean, that's what has evolved and set us apart from the other life forms on the planet, is our ability to think, our cognitive reasoning abilities. But the mind and its abilities to reason, to compare and contrast, to critically think, is not the place where we make decisions from. But we can certainly use the mind to help us visualize, to help us compare and contrast the things that, that we want to run through our other authority centers. And at this point, then, Venus is helping us to put in perspective the mind and how it is we are manifest, or if we are manifesting from our minds, as opposed to the actual authority centers in our human design. The gift in this gate is self-assurance. Think about how wonderful it would be, and it is, when you've made decisions that are correct for you. When you've made decisions, once you know your human design authority, and your authority is literally your strategy, and your authority make up your decision-making components. So if you're a generator, manifesting generator, you are waiting to respond, for example, to something in your outer world. But let's say you have emotional authority. The emotional authority is designed to wait through the emotional wave. And I'm always telling my emotionally authority people that you've got to at least have one sleep on something before you make a decision. And yet the mind will be, because the head center is a pressure center, the root center is the pressure center. That's why they're not authorities, right? You can't have a pressure center being your authority, because it puts the pressure on you to do, or the pressure on you to answer a question like, why am I doing this? How do I figure this out? So the authority centers then help you stay on track with making decisions that are right for you. And when you're making decisions, then when you know in your body that you've made the right decisions for you, then self-assurance is there. It is yours. It is the gift for you to have. The highest expression in this gate is the presence. He does, he meaning Richard Rudd, does a really great job distinguishing the word presence in the highest expression of the Siddhi of this gene key. He calls it the sacred octave. And he says it could really be said, instead of calling it presence, he says it should be called the presence, the real divine presence within you. And that is the gift, the highest expression of what Venus is showing us right now, in terms of making correct decisions, leading us to out of superficiality and into self-assurance, and eventually leading us to a complete connection with our divine presence. So, and Venus, I don't think we normally think of her in those terms, but she's very important. She's a very important player. Many astronomers think of Venus as Earth's twin or Earth's sister. I don't know that twin would be the right word, because she's definitely a whole lot hotter. Did you realize that Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system? Not Mercury, that you would think Mercury would be because it's so close to the sun. But Venus is has upwards of 700 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface of her planet, and that's pretty dang hot. That's hotter than Mercury has. So she's hot. She's on fire, and she's the feminine representation of that fire, that passion, that value that we have on one another and on ourselves, leading us to self-assurance. So I thought I would share that with you today. And for the most part, that's all I have for you today. Tomorrow, I wanted to share with you something else. I forgot. And then maybe I'll pull a card because we still have some time here. Next week on Tuesday, I will have a guest on the show. Her name is Angie Witzel. And I'm trying to think if I think her Facebook page is her name, Angie Witzel, but she's a medium. And I was introduced to her yesterday, or she introduced herself to me, but I think Roseanne must have been the one that she knows Roseanne. I think Roseanne told her to contact me. So we're going to be talking to her on air on Tuesday. And then I also had another astrologer reach out to me yesterday. She's written a book about relationships in astrology. And so as soon as I get a chance to read the book that she's hopefully sending me here, I will have her on our show and we'll talk to her about relationships in astrology. So fun stuff coming up. Let's see, is there anything else I'm missing? Tomorrow's Friday. Yay! We'll be talking about the weekend, and tomorrow we'll dive into the full moon. But for the most part, I think I'm done for right now. So I wish you all a wonderful day. Remember that we are living a gentle, joyful, loving, and abundant life, and make it so. All right. Much love to everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you. Oh, I was going to do a card. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. See my Gemini mind flitting around. Let's see. What do we want to ask the cards about today? Maybe we'll just ask what it is that Spirit would like us to know. And one already fell out of the deck called By the Book. Fell out upside down. If that's it, upside down. If I turn it around, it is elephants. You know, elephants are like good luck. By the book. So let's see what by the book might mean for us today. In protection mode, by the way. By the book, card number 11. So there's some illumination here for us. That's 12, 11. So by the book, the card's meaning. Good morning, Londa. Love you too. And Natasha, good to see you. And the essential meaning is abiding by social rules, conformity, respecting cultural or family customs, and universal laws. But it was upside down. So the protection message here. Now is the time for a real change in consciousness as you are incited to revolt. Challenge the structures that are limiting authentic progress. It is not enough to rebel in small ways. This is a call to revolution. Focus on what you really want to achieve, regardless of whether it feels so far outside the box that the established order may reject it. Genius, invention, and transformation are rarely comfortable and less likely to be accepted by the mainstream. It may be time for you to say no to the way of your group, take a stand, and make real changes. It could be that the structure of your inner world is alerting you to the need for a complete overhaul. This is a time for transformation, so let go of the fear of change. Your intuition will lead you through the darkness. There is no turning back now. Trust that light will dawn. Epiphanies will surely lead to miracles. Did I read the right card? Holy cow. I mean, that seems to... This is, by the way, The Wisdom of the Oracle by Colette Baron Reed. Love her cards. Love this book. Love everything about this. But that seems to be setting us up for perhaps the Uranus into Taurus move. I think it validates Venus at gate 20. That's telling us all about not settling for the superficial, to reach up inside of us and bring up more consciousness. So I think it's a great card. I usually, when I get a card upside down, I can't help myself. There's that momentary reaction of what is this going to mean, right? I think this one in reverse, if you will, or in protection mode is a fairly striking card, calling us to perhaps be something more than what we think that we are right now. So I kind of like that idea. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for checking in with me today. I love you all. We'll see you tomorrow morning, Friday, and we'll talk about the full moon and all of that it means in light of all of the things that are happening in the world right now. So don't be surprised by your outer world today. Stay in peace, stay in love, And remember that we are living a gentle, joyful, loving, and abundant life. I love that saying. Oh, anyway, take care. Mwah. Bye for now.